Okay. Good morning, everyone. As we continue our exploration of the Refuge Nundro practice. So let's start like we usually do with a few moments of meditation to come from the meetings and excitement of the morning, whatever that may have been. Bring ourselves present. Then I'll set the motivation and then we'll go right into the practice, okay? So Venerable Kunga, so I'll lead the visualization again, and when we do that, if you'll pop up the this, which maybe I'll hold up while I lead it, I don't know, but it's better if it's up here on the screen and the people online will be able to see it, or you have it, there's a PDF there on the, that you can access via the link. Yeah, it's via link on the chat, in the chat box. Oh, there's a link in the chat box, that's easiest. Okay, great. And use that while I describe the visualization, maybe to really look at this image today and get that in your mind. Okay. So get settled in your meditative posture. Taking a few moments to settle the mind by consciously taking your awareness to your breath. And to set our motivation this morning, we take a little bit of time to recall the kindness of sentient beings and how our lives depend so completely on others. And we have really seen this so much in the last 9-10 days. I know it's a very tender time, and when our heart is open and soft, it's easy, much easier to see how kindness manifests around us. I mean, here at the Abbey, dozens, scores, maybe even hundreds, I don't know, so many people have poured into the Abbey ground to help us look for Geshe-la. Not just humans, but horses and dogs too, seeming to have the same clear intent to benefit, wanting to help. Their kindness just so clear in their enthusiasm for the search and their care and kindness in regard to the community. So vivid. And people's prayers and good wishes, the pujas that have happened around the world, so much kindness pouring in this direction. How can we miss it? We cannot. Spontaneously coming from the good hearts of these living beings upon whom we depend. And since we have this illustration right around us right now, we can expand that recollection to think how this has really been so throughout our whole life. Kindness in every direction, from strangers, from loved ones, even the kindness of the difficult people who help show us, a way to work with difficulties or give us opportunities to practice the Dharma. And if we can establish or accept in our mind that the substantial cause of a moment of mind is the previous moment of mind, that continuity of consciousness is beginningless, and that there's no power in the universe that can sever it, so that the mind goes, consciousness goes on, and on, then we can logically accept that we have been reborn uncountable times in relationship to these very people who have been so kind to us lately. We experienced their kindness then, and we'll experience their kindness again. And our wish to repay that kindness, I imagine right now, is quite strong. Think about that a moment. And when we really have that sense of their kindness and our gratitude in our heart, then all of our tendencies to be uneasy or insecure or feel alienated from others vanishes. Because we see we have a very deep connection with each sentient being for many, many lifetimes. So as we turn our minds towards the refuge practice this morning, we can think of these living beings whose kindness has been so touching in their lives that are still in samsara, the dukkha they encounter moment by moment, and wish them to be free of suffering in every possible way. And so we turn to our practice, we turn to our Dharma study, we turn to the Buddha Dharma Sangha as our refuge so that we can grow our own good qualities and we can repay their kindness by leading them on the spiritual path. And so we begin with the visualization of the refuge field in the space in front. Venerable Kunga, if you'll pop it up on the screen. So visualize it before me amidst an ocean of Samantabhadra offerings in the middle of a spacious throne of precious jewels. It's a smaller, radiant jeweled throne. And on this, my root spiritual mentor, appearing in the aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha, sits on cushions of a variegated lotus, sun, and moon, all made of light. Buddha's body is pure gold, radiant. And he wears the 3 robes of a monastic. Buddha's left hand is in the gesture of meditation. His right hand is in the earth-touching gesture, and he sits in the cross-legged position. Golden rays of light brighter than the sun radiate from his body in the 10 directions. Eyes never tire of his resplendent form with its perfect, vivid signs and marks. Ears never tire of his enchanting speech with its 60 melodies. His vast and profound mind is a treasure of knowledge and love whose depth is beyond measure. Free from all stains of imperfection, he is the consummation of all good qualities. The mere recollection of the Buddha dispels the anxieties of cyclic existence and self-complacent peace. And he displays manifold, amazing powers like the 12 deeds to tame beings in countless worlds. Get that Buddha image clearly in your mind. In the space to his right sits Maitreya, surrounded by the spiritual mentors of the lineage, including and starting with Venerable Sangha, the lineage of extensive deeds. In the space to his left sits Manjushri, the spiritual mentors of the profound view, beginning with Arya Nagarjuna. In front of the Buddha Shakyamuni is your own root spiritual mentor in the aspect of giving teachings. So your own teacher, the teacher who has touched your heart the most, along with the whole array of Dharma teachers that you have related to. Those with whom you have a Dharma connection. They're all seated on cushions of lotus, sun, and moon, and they're looking at you. In the space behind Buddha Shakyamuni sits Vajradhara, victorious lord of myriad tantras, surrounded by the lineage of spiritual mentors of the blessings of the practice. And then in great circles around these central thrones of the central deities, in the 4 directions, sits the retinue of Guhya Samaja, Chakrasambhara, Vajrabhairava, and Kalachakra with their mandalas. Around them, a circle of all the meditational deities. So if you have particular deities that you meditate with, you can see them in this circle. Circling all around them is a row of Buddhas, including our 35 Buddhas, the medicine Buddhas, and so forth. Around them, 2 circles of arhats, the solitary realizers, and then the hearer arhats. Around them, the Dakas, Dakinis, Dharma protectors, and the 4 directional protectors. So imagine this blaze of light radiating from all of these realized beings. And on either side of the lineage of spiritual mentors are splendid stands with their Dharma texts, their Dharma teachings. You can imagine these texts brilliantly radiating light and vibrating with the sound of the Dharma. Thus all space is filled with the objects of refuge. And then surrounding each of us are gathered all the beings of the 6 realms. Ordinary beings overwhelmed by our difficulties, our sufferings of samsara. Overwhelmed by our afflictions and living out the karma we create as a result of them. In the face of such constantly recurring problems, we seek the protection and guidance of the spiritual mentors and the 3 jewels. So get this state of mind of refuge deeply in your heart. And we'll start with the recitation in a moment. Namo Guruvya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Guruvya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Guruvya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrow and bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all my destructive actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate all the virtues of myself and others to the great awakening. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn
mandala kandiryatayami.
So make your request, whatever that may be, for inspiration. Today we're going to focus on the Buddha. Taking refuge in the Buddha, so make your connection very strong. And think of the negativities that we do in regard to the Buddha. Things like putting, Buddha images in dirty places, or having disparaging thoughts about Buddha images, all the way up to perhaps in some life having tried to harm a Buddha or hated a Buddha. So many ways that we can create negative karma in relation to this precious field of merit. So make our firm request to strengthen our relationship with the Buddha, all the Buddhas. And we'll do the visualization for a few moments of the Refuge Nundro, so that by reciting Namo Buddhaya many, many times, visualizing that light pours from all the Buddhas in the merit field. First, white light flushing out through you, down through you, flushing out of your body all the negativities, especially related to karma, negative karma created with the Buddhas. All of that flushing out of your system like filthy water, either evaporating in the air or pouring into the mouth of Yama, who's totally satisfied to take it up. And when you're purified for a while, turn that into golden light that's bringing the realizations of the Buddha's holy mind. Feel very alive and light and refreshed, and deeply connected with the Buddhas. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. Namo Guruvya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Guruvya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Namo Gurubhya, Namo Buddhaya,
Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya.
To really feel bathed, purified, and connected, inspired by your connection with the Buddha Dharma Sangha. And the visualization begins to dissolve from the outside in. All the light being is absorbing into the central figure of Shakyamuni Buddha. And then Shakyamuni Buddha emanates countless replicas of himself that come to the crown of your head and the heads of all the beings around you. It all dissolves into your heart. Your body, speech, and mind become very pure, clear, and bright. You're inseparable. Your mind, the Buddha's mind, become inseparable. And so here's where you could do your Lam Rim if you wanted to do more than others. So we'll make the talk today our Lam Rim section. Yes. You may have noticed that I lead it a little bit differently every time. That's intentional. We have this kind of variety with this practice so that the sequence is clearly the same, right? The sequence is the same, but how you work with this within your own practice or even what comes up. If you want to spend the entire session doing the visualization with the mantra, that's fine. If there are times when, spending a lot of time on the visualization, especially at the beginning of the retreat, that's also fine. So you have all of that flexibility within your own session. And if you're doing 5 sessions a day, then there's a wide range of how to work with this, right? So is that clear for everybody? We're getting clear that that's the structure and that's how to use it. The other thing that's important that we haven't talked about, but we will again, but while you're doing the recitation, you can also be reflecting on various aspects of refuge, the qualities of the Buddha, while you're doing the Buddha mantra, for example, or all the ways that we can create negativity with the Buddha. That you can have in your mind as you're doing the purification visualization and as you're doing the recitation. So at first, to get all these pieces going at the same time may seem a little bit daunting. And that's why you can build the visualization, build time with the mantra, build time with the analytic meditation, one by one if you wish. But as you practice more and more and you get these coming together, that will be quite a smooth, synchronized thing. And that really enriches each session. Okay? Questions about that? Okay. Come back. Okay. So, in the course of this, we've talked about reasons for going. Yes, question.
Venerable, the refuge field, right, is in a semicircle or in a full circle?
I think it's up to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's hard to, I mean, it's up to you. It's up to you what works best for your mind. Yeah. Yeah. And your reference point in relationship to them. That circle may be all around and you outside of it. It's up to you. Okay. So we've talked about the causes for taking refuge, which are, of samsara, right? So a sense of dread or caution about the possibility of experiencing suffering in the future. And if we're looking at suffering, a note, I think we mentioned this last week, but if we're looking at experiencing suffering in the future in this life, that's reasonable, but it's not actually the Dharma motivation. We're looking further out. We're looking at the protection from experiencing suffering first in our future lives. First through our rebirth, wanting to do what we can to establish a fortunate rebirth in the future, and a succession of them actually, then through purifying all the negativities that create this possibility of rebirth. In other words, practicing with the wish to attain liberation from all suffering and the causes. And then ultimately looking around at everybody else and wishing them all to be free too. And so wishing to be able to become Buddha so that we have the capacity to do that. So that's all right there in the very beginning. If we think about even the causes for why we start this recitation, you could spend your whole session just on the motivation and what that means for you and how that path might lay out. So the second reason is what? Confidence in the qualities of the three jewels, yeah. Confidence. Confidence that the three jewels can lead us, can do what we want to do, can help us develop a fortunate rebirth, can help us attain liberation, that can help lead us all the way to enlightenment. And then we know that we can do that because we meditate on the qualities of the three jewels. So the Buddha, the Dharma, Sangha, the three jewels of refuge, we all know that. The Buddhas are all the beings who have attained full awakening. The Dharma is their realizations as well as the teachings that lead us to liberation. And the Sangha, in the strictest sense, is those who have actualized this liberating wisdom by realizing emptiness directly. There's a lovely quote, I'm using Buddhism, one teacher, many traditions this week, where Venerable Children and His Holiness say, the three jewels are called jewels because they are rare and precious. Like the mythical wish-fulfilling jewel that grants all wishes and needs, they are continuously willing and capable of providing us refuge, protecting us from samsara's dukkha, and showing us the way to attain lasting, pure, and blissful fulfillment. So they are precious jewels. I think in our culture, maybe jewels are not quite as snazzy anymore. Maybe only the very, very rich have them, so we don't even know what they are. But to think of them as these very, very precious, bright, light things, the wish-fulfilling jewel that can truly lead us out of suffering, is worth meditating on too. What does that mean? What is a wish-fulfilling jewel? So to have confidence, we need to know what they are, these three jewels. And last week we barely got started on the Buddha. So that's what I want to spend time on today. So we talked last week too about what is a Buddhist, right? One who does something with the Buddha. Admires the Buddha, admires the teachings. For those of us in the Mahayana path, we aspire to follow the Buddha, to become the Buddha. By learning the path, we become the Buddha. And then what we're confident in is if we follow the Buddha's guidance in following the paths that he himself traveled, that's part of what makes the Buddha a reliable guide. The Buddha did this himself. Buddhas have done this herself. Because they have done this, they can turn around and teach and guide like a guide on a mountain path. Knows exactly where to put your foot, exactly where to go, and they're teaching us how to do that. And so that's why they're reliable guides. So there's three ways we can think about Buddha in general, and I have found this extremely helpful. The first is we think about the Buddha as Shakyamuni Buddha, our founding Buddha who lived 2,500 years ago. When we do our recitations, homage to our root teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, we're thinking of the historical Buddha who gave the teachings for this time. And that is the Buddha refuge for the fundamental vehicle. That's super clear. He showed the path. From the Mahayana perspective, he gave the teachings of all three vehicles during his lifetime on this planet. The Buddha appears at a time when no Dharma has been in that eon. And so Shakyamuni Buddha came, and we are born at this time where he is the historic Buddha that we can it's kind of tangible. We have the teachings, we have descriptions, we have stories about the Buddha's life. So we can see the Buddha as a person. And the story of how he attained awakening becomes a real inspiration for us because, he was not an ordinary guy, but he was a young man who lived in this certain environment and gave up his wife and his palace and his everything to go find it. So, we can relate to his story. The second way, or another way that we can see Buddhas is to see all the Buddha figures, all the deities. Where's my image? Anyway, yeah, all the deities in the merit field also as aspects of Buddha's enlightened mind. And they appear to benefit sentient beings based on our karma. So out of their tremendous compassion, Buddhas appear in these various forms that we can relate to, that we can connect with. The omniscient mind of Buddha is so vast. It's very, very hard for us ordinary, very narrow, small-minded and obscured beings to connect with what actually this is. But to appear with 1,000 arms and 11 faces with a heart of compassion that's reaching out for every living being, that can be very inspiring for some people. Some people are more inspired perhaps by the appearance of Mummy Tara in all of her many aspects of being the mother of beings. So we connect depending on our own karma, depending on our own propensities. The wrathful deities too appearing for different reasons. All of them have the same realizations. Everyone has exactly the same realization. It's not like Chenrezig has more compassion than Manjushri, or that Manjushri is smarter than Tara, or there's some sort of competition around who's the better Buddha. None of that is viable. That's us. That's ordinary beings' minds. But that to see them as the compassionate appearances of enlightened mind is another way that we can relate to them. And then the third way is to relate to the Buddha that we will become. Our own Buddha potential, our own Buddha nature. And as more and more people here have been taking, I think, the empowerments from His Holiness and start to have the capacity to generate themselves as the deity and learn how to do that properly, it becomes clearer and clearer about how we can take refuge in the Buddha that we will become. Right? So there's all three of these ways with which we can hold this image hold this idea of Buddha. And we don't have to pick one. We can, at different times in our mind, different times in our practice, different needs, we can see them in any of these three ways. So when you're doing the visualization, when the light is coming from the Buddhas, it's coming from Buddha in the central figure. It can be coming from all of these deities around. It's coming from Maitreya, it's coming from Manjushri, the light is coming from all the meditational deities, it's coming from the circle of Buddhas. I mean, it is a light. There is light pouring from all of these. Does that make sense? To be able to look at it in these different ways? I find that super helpful. Super, super helpful. And they do that to communicate with us. Our minds we're so coarse. We're just coarse. We can only apprehend anything through our senses. Our sense consciousness is in our mental consciousness, right? So these really gross visual consciousness, audio consciousness, our nose, our taste, our body, and in our mind, which is also obscured and runs wild. The Buddha mind, enlightened mind, is very, very subtle. We can't get the beam. It just doesn't come through straightforward. So these appearances of the Buddhas, that's how they communicate with us, and that's how they teach us. When Venerable Deki is one who leads this most often, remembering that the Buddha is all around us, everywhere, 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 that's accurate, that's true. And if we think about, the more we learn about what Buddha is, the more we can really begin to understand logically how that's true, why that's true. And then to have these appearances, it becomes even more inspiring. It's like, oh, they're doing this to show me. They're doing this to remind me, because they don't have to. Actually, they do have to. The Buddha has spent so many eons developing this compassion to benefit sentient beings that they spontaneously appear and develop, work for the benefit of others. So in a way, they do have to. It's also important, I think, if we're looking at the second way of looking at all these meditational deities as appearing for our own benefit, to remember that they also became Buddha. They didn't just become, they're not some holy magical thing that appeared out of nowhere and has been Tara since beginningless time. Tara's origin story we actually know, or that's the only one I've ever heard. But the story of Tara having been a princess whose bodhicitta was so great that she was liberating beings left and right and center, and men said to her, you should be reborn as a man next time so that you can become a Buddha. And she said, no, I'm going to become a Buddha as a woman. And so she did. So it's an inspiring story. It's why I remember it. But all of them, however a Buddha came to be, they all became. There's no beginningless time Buddha. Technically speaking, they all became Buddhas. And that's part of the inspiration that we can and will also. Okay. So we have the Buddha, we have the Dharma, we have the Sangha, and we also, in the Mahayana, we take refuge in the ultimate Guru. And the Vajrayana, actually, it's the Vajrayana take. We take refuge in the ultimate Guru. And a question came in about, what is this root Guru? How do I understand the root Guru when we say that the Buddha appears in the form, or my root teacher appears in the form of the Buddha? There are many different ways to think about that too, and we're going to do the Guru Bhya section at the very end, as I said before. But there's two ways we can think about the Guru Bhya section. One is, as we're talking now, our ultimate teacher is Shakyamuni Buddha in this life, in this eon. Our fundamental teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, that's what we say in our Vinaya recitations every time. If our teachers, as Venerable Children often says, our teachers are teaching us exactly what the Buddha would teach us if the Buddha were sitting here in this chair. Not me, but if Venerable Children was sitting in this chair, she would be teaching exactly what the Buddha would be teaching. And so to think not of her as the Buddha, but to think of that teaching that's coming through as Buddha as the source, then we can hold that picture of the teacher appearing in the aspect of the Buddha. And that actually helps us have more confidence in the credibility of our teachers. So if you have a root teacher, someone who, the teacher who has most inspired the Dharma in your heart, has most clarified things, has most connected you with the Dharma, that's how we talk about our root teacher. If you don't have such a person, then holding the Buddha in that position or holding His Holiness in that position is also fine. But it's important, actually, to recognize that we do need a teacher. Now, we can't just read Eckhart Tolle over here and what's her name? Brana, anyway. Yeah, Brene Brown over here, and oh yeah, a little bit of Lamrim too, and put it all together and think we're practicing the Dharma. We're not. We need that teacher to guide us and keep us on track. A qualified teacher. Okay. So that takes us then, when we're looking at what are the qualities of the Buddha, we need to look at also the 4 Buddha bodies, which Venerables has taught on quite a few times in the last little while, but I wanted to bring us to it into this context. So when we talk about the Buddha and the 4 Buddha bodies, I think I said before, I used to find this incredibly confusing, and it may take a little while to sort this out. But when we're talking about Buddhas, we're talking about Buddha bodies. We don't mean bodies, right? And I'm not quoting from the Vajrayana Sutra here. This is like a whole other thing. When we mean bodies in terms of collection. So each body of the Buddha is a collection. At least 3 of them are. I'm not positive about 4, but I'll get that straightened out. But it's like a corpus, a collection, like a body of work. Shakespeare's corpus, Shakespeare's body of work is the entire collection of text associated with him. Bon Jovi's body of work is the entire collection of albums attributed to that band, right? Or Leonard Cohen, or whoever, whatever, however old you are. The collection of work over time. So you could say Buddha bodies are like a collection of their works over countless lifetimes. You could draw that parallel. Collections. So even when we do the Shakyamuni Buddha meditation that's in the Blue Prayer Book, it starts with, imagine the qualities that you aspire for. Love, compassion, wisdom, generosity, and so forth. They all appear in the form of Shakyamuni Buddha. So even in our very beginning meditation practice, we're being led to look at this as a collection. Now, does my mind see that collection even when I read this? No, I see Buddha, solid Buddha. Do you have that same experience? Yeah. Does that collection actually cling to your mind? No. So I think our invitation here is to really try to use that, thinking about the collection of qualities. And that will help us not see this as, so solid as we hold it. So there's a collection. So first we speak of 2, the Buddha's truth body and the Buddha's form body. Buddha's truth collection, the Buddha's form collection. The Dharmakaya, Rupakaya. And the collection of wisdom is the cause for the Dharmakaya. Collection of merit is basically, substantially, mainly the cause for the Rupakaya, form bodies. The Dharmakaya fulfills the work of self, they say. So it fulfills the works of liberation, complete awakening for the being who has become that. That's us, someday. And the Rupakaya fulfills the works of others, appearing to guide. So it's not like these appear one at a time as you become Buddha. Oh, there's this one, then there's this one, there's this one. They all appear spontaneously. But there's all of these aspects of Buddha, Dharmakaya, Rupakaya. Geshe Topke said in his Rice Seedling Sutra, he said, Buddha's Dharmakaya works with beings through the Rupakayas. It's a very clear way of saying it. The Buddha's Dharmakaya works for sentient beings through the Rupakayas. And then he says, among all the activities of the Buddha, supreme among them is teaching the Dharma. Otherwise, how could we access? We can't. So that's through the Buddha's speech. The Buddha's speech necessarily has to arise from a form body, a form collection, Rupakaya. So we can think about those in that way. Got it? That part? Okay, so then it's further divided. The Dharmakaya is divided into 2 also. There's the wisdom Dharmakaya, which is the Buddha's omniscient mind. It is an permanent phenomenon, momentary, just like ours, only it's completely pure. And then there's the nature Dharmakaya, which is the emptiness of the Buddha's mind and the true cessations of that mind. So they are two entities, one nature, inseparable. And that wisdom mind can only exist because of the emptiness of that mind. Has to be. There's the wisdom Dharmakaya, the nature Dharmakaya. And then the Rupakaya is also divided into two. There's the Sambhogakaya, or the enjoyment body, or another translation is the bliss body, which is a subtle form whereby the Buddha appears in order to teach the high-level bodhisattvas that are also subtle enough to be able to take teachings directly from such a subtle mind, or such a subtle form, in a Buddha field. And then there's the Nirmanakaya, the emanation bodies of the Buddhas. And that's the form the Buddha appears in the world to teach people the path to liberation. So, I looked this up because I wasn't confident about this, but it's quite clearly they say that all of the meditational deities are the emanation bodies, even though we can't touch them. If that's not accurate, I want to check it because it's still a little bit of a doubt in my mind. But it also makes sense that would be the solution, the answer to that question. That the deities, meditational deities, are emanation bodies. No. Sambhogakaya is the bliss or enjoyment body that teaches the bodhisattvas. Emanation bodies are the bodies, collections, that appear in order to teach living beings, ordinary beings. Nirmanakaya. So they're Nirmanakaya. And then a supreme emanation body is someone who is a wheel-turning Buddha, like our Shakyamuni Buddha, who actually takes a human-looking form, or whatever realm they're in. If they're not all, I guess they have to be human no matter what they look like. A human-looking form in order to directly teach to the people for a period of time. And that Buddha sets the whole wheel of Dharma in motion. That Buddha is the one that restores the Buddha in any particular age, the Dharma in any particular age. And as we have learned from our Vinaya class, when an emanation or supreme emanation body Buddha establishes a Sangha and gives precepts, it is for the intent of that practice, for that Dharma to last for a very long time. In the Vinaya, it's said that the Buddha taught that previous Buddhas, when they did not establish the Sangha and give precepts, their Dharma did not last in the world very long. They came, they taught, it died out. But through establishing the Sangha and establishing the precepts, then the perpetuation of the Dharma can go on for as long as the Sangha can continue it. And that's why we hear in the 10 reasons, every time the Buddha laid down a precept for the Sangha, the 10th reason is for the Dharma to last forever. And you have to think about this. Why is that? Even in the Vinaya that we recite, where the Buddha, at the end of our recitation, or it says, the Buddha says something like, do not think, because I'm not here anymore, that I have left you without a teacher. Rely on your precepts, rely on the Vinaya as your guide. And so because practitioners can go to this level of renunciation, take precepts, and move forward, and then ordain others into the succeeding generations that will also carry the Dharma, practice it, and realize it. So it's not just through the scriptural Dharma that it is continued, it's through the realizational Dharma as well. But to have the best environment for that realizational Dharma, the Sangha continues it. And that's why it's so important to have a functioning Sangha, and any place to be able to continue the Dharma. No matter, they're fabulous lay Dharma teachers in this country, no question about it, really superb, gifted ones. But their lineage is not going to carry it forward in the same way that Sangha lineage can. So that's a little side thing, but it inspires me a lot. Approaching the Buddha's path lays out how these emanation bodies, how these four bodies relate. So I'm just going to read the quote. An emanation body manifests from a subtler body, an enjoyment body, the Sambhogakaya, which is the form the Buddha assumes in order to teach Arya Bodhisattvas in the Pure Lands. An enjoyment body, in turn, emerges from the omniscient mind of the Buddha, the wisdom body, the wisdom truth body. The wisdom truth body arises within the underlying nature of reality of Buddha's nature truth body, which is the emptiness of the Buddha's mind and the final true cessation actualized by the Buddha. Right? So that's the order that they depend on. And they exist simultaneously. They arise simultaneously. Both the mind of a Buddha and its emptiness are called truth bodies because a Buddha's wisdom is the ultimate true path. And the emptiness of that mind is the ultimate true cessation. And that ultimate is what we are aspiring for as we practice this refuge practice. That makes sense? Questions or issues around the four bodies of the Buddha? Okay, then I want to get into the, there's so many lists. Like, to know the qualities of the Buddhas is an amazing, actually, collection of things, beautiful quotes and lists. But I wanted to start with the 10 powers of the Buddha, which it's very interesting to look at some of these books. The way it's translated in Buddhism, One Teacher, Many Tradition, is not exactly the way it's translated in Volume 4. So we get some juice around that. We won't have time to get through all 10 of these. But over the course of the retreat, if we're studying these lists, I have a little booklet that I just have on my puja table where the list is right in front of me with notes, and I can use that as my Lamrim meditation by just going through the qualities of the Buddha. You can go through the qualities of the Buddha as you're reciting it. And I will say, for me personally, doing this refuge retreat and reflecting on even just the list itself has had really mind and heart opening capacity to give me a deeper understanding of what I've done, what I've done in taking refuge, what I've done in taking on the Buddha's path. We get some sense of where we're going and how it's possible to get there. Okay, the 10 powers. These come from the Dasa Bhumika Sutra, Sanskrit Sutra, the Mahayana Sutra. They are also found in the Pali, almost exactly the same, with maybe slightly different interpretation. Interpretation is not a word you're supposed to use, but different takes. But they're also in the Majjhima Nikaya. But I believe these ones that are here are taken from this Mahayana Sutra. They are 10 exalted wisdoms, right? So this is a wisdom mind that have abandoned all obscurations and know the infinite objects of knowledge. The first one, the direct, unmistaken perception of the Tathagata knows the tenable and the untenable, the relations between actions and their results. Now, in the volume 4, it looks like this is, instead of being translated as the tenable and untenable, it's the Buddha knows just as it is the possible and the impossible. It's a little easier to grasp. And here, this is from FPMT, the power of knowing the consequences of all karmic actions. That's what it boils down to. This first power is that the Buddha has the understanding of what actions produce happiness, what actions produce suffering, what is the karma we create for us and for Arya beings, what is the cause that we create through certain actions. So this is helpful. I mean, having this power, knowing this, helps the Buddha to guide us individually on the path. Knows what our karma is, knows what the actions are, knows what the results will be, and so can guide accordingly. And then the second one follows right along from that. Let's see what it says here. Only the Tathagata fully and accurately knows the intricacies of past, present, and future karma and their results, including subtle causes leading to a particular experience in the beginning of lives of sentient beings. Here it's called knowing the power of knowing the previous causes of all karmic results. Here, Tathagata understands as it actually is actions undertaken in the oh, this is a nice way of saying it. The Tathagata understands as it actually is actions undertaken in past, present, and future with the possibilities and its causes. So it boils down to the way they have it. The Buddha understands the tiniest details of karma, the intricacies of karma. Only the Buddha can do that. So, for example, what are the causes that brought Gyatso, Venerable Gyatso, into this room right here today? The Buddha knows that X zillion eons ago, this person was somebody's cat and heard a few mantra and then had a rebirth that led to a human rebirth that had the opportunity to hear the Dharma or whatever, and then, just a few eons ago met a monk and, had some enlightening experience, but somehow knows the direct path that made sitting in this room with these people today possible, and knows what the result of that will be, how that will ripen. When Venerable was teaching this, she told this wonderful story. I haven't heard it in a while, so I will share it again. So if you remember from the sutras, there was when the Buddha was here on this earth, there was an old man, very old, the guy was very, like 100, whose family had thrown him out. They were tired of taking care of him and his old man, and all in the world he wanted to do was ordain. And he was kind of alone and crying, and the monks were like, you're old, and they could not see that he had any karma, that he had enough merit to be a monk. And so Shariputra was involved in the story, Madhyana was involved in the story. They both had, they were both arhats. They both had extensive powers to be able to see rebirths, and they looked through this man's consciousness, or however you look when you're an arhat, I don't know, and they could not see that he had the virtue that would make him be a monk. So the Buddha comes by, and here's this man weeping. He's so upset, and so it's all he wants to do with the last bit of his life. And the Buddha asks him, what's the problem? And the man says, I want to be a monk. They say, I don't have the karma for it. And the Buddha looked, and he said, oh, yes, you do. Yes, you do. And what he could see was that who knows when, this old man had been a fly. And the fly had taken a landing on a bit of cow dung that was floating in a moat that then was giving a circular pattern. And in the middle of this moat, there was a stupa. So the fly on the cow dung, floating around the stupa in the middle of the moat, circumambulated that stupa, and thereby created the merit in order to be able to take ordination at that time. With the Buddha, I'd like to add. Taking ordination with the Buddha from sitting on a bit of fly dung that goes around a stupa, I mean, that's an amazing karmic result, don't you think? Blows my mind. I also find it very reassuring that perhaps I don't know, that I have created some merit more than that. I don't know. But anyway, that point being that only the Buddha could see the intricacies of this man's karma that would give him what he aspired for. So, we talk about karma a lot, and we get hung up in karma sometimes about trying to figure out what's the karma of this and what's the karma of that. We learn, of course, the results of our actions. When we're studying the 10 non-virtuous actions, we study the 10 virtuous actions. That's the very first thing we learn when we become Buddhist. Let's clean up our act and stop creating the causes of negativity. And it's very important. The more we understand karma, the more scrupulous we can be about our behavior. And the more enthusiastic we get about overcoming our afflictions that propel us to do these and say these things, right? But our understanding is still going to be super general. Oh, so general. And only the Buddha knows these intricacies that go back and back and back. So that's a power. That's a power. And thereby, Buddha can appear to us in whatever way we need, and can guide beings in a way that they can hear and progress along the path. Okay, we'll do one more for today, I think, before we do, maybe two more before we do the discussion. 3, the Tathagata knows the various destinations of ordinary beings. That means the samsaric realms, and the paths that lead to rebirth there. He also knows the destinations of the Arya's 3 vehicles, nirvana, and the paths leading to that. So the hero's nirvana, the solitary realizer's nirvana, and the awakening of bodhisattvas. He knows those destinations. Here it says, it's kind of different. The power of knowing the various wishes or interests of all living beings. I think that might allude to their paths. Here, the Tathagata understands as it actually is the ways leading to all destinations, which means all the rebirths of people and what causes people created to be reborn there. So knowing what these paths are is another way the Buddha guides us. It's important to know if you're going to guide people. So the 4th one, the Tathagata understands as it actually is the world and its many different elements. Or the elements that compose it, that's what it says here. So here they're talking about like the physical world, the 6 elements, the sense sources, the 22 faculties, the 5 aggregates, the 12 links. Where am I? Yeah, the 6 elements, external and internal sources. 18 constituents in the lower schools. So looking at the material world, as it were, understanding the finest details of the material world and seeing them all within impermanence, conditioned, and dependent processes. Understanding all of that without any question, without any doubt. The Buddha sees all of that and knows it. That's the 4th power. Understanding the world and its various elements. And then the 5th one, we'll go one more. He knows the different inclinations of beings. This one, the power of knowing the scope of all beings. And this one is knowing the various faculties of all beings. So the way this goes, he also knows the destination. No. I'm on 5. This enables him to teach them the Dharma according to their individual faculties, abilities, and aspirations. So we all have different dispositions, obviously. We all have different tendencies. We have different inclinations. And because of that, it determines what kind of teaching will be beneficial for us. Some people love doing deity practice. They love doing devotional practice. That's the pathway into really hooking someone into the Dharma, right? For other people, the analytic meditation is like everything. For some people, they hear about emptiness and they shut down. Some people hear about emptiness and they go, whoa, that's it. That's the solution I've been looking for. So we all have these different directions, and the Buddha has taught them all. The Buddha has taught every one of them pointing towards the path to liberation and awakening. But by knowing the different faculties and inclinations of people, the Buddha knows what to teach to each type of person, and so gives teachings that will accord for each type of person. It's why the variety of teachings exist. That's why we have the Kangyur in the meditation hall. That's 108 volumes. How many volumes of teachings in the Kangyur? 108. And that's not all the Buddha's teachings. If you look at all the different other, like the Chinese canon has teachings that we don't have, the Tibetan doesn't have. The Pali canon has teachings that the Tibetan doesn't have. So many teachings. Designed for or intended for the various dispositions of beings. So when we think about that, when we look at these qualities, and we look at how even just these first 5, and we'll come back to the next 5 next week, how the Buddha's kindness in teaching in this world, every single bit of it is geared towards benefiting living beings. Not a word is wasted. Not a story is wasted. It's astonishing, actually, to think that somewhere in the universe there are beings who care enough about you and me by name, because they know, to give this kind of teaching. And we had the karma to be born to be able to hear it. We had the karma to be able to born in a situation where we have teachers who can teach it. And we, English-speaking only people, have the karma to be born at a time and a place when our teacher and others are putting out work that let us learn it. This is astonishing. It's truly astonishing. So when we think about that and we get inspired about that and keep that inspiration, then to be able to do this retreat on taking refuge, to be able to take the opportunity to live in the monastery and train, or visit the monastery and train, or be a part of this, we can only be grateful and use it to the best of our ability, not just for our own liberation, which is okay. The Dharmakaya, it fulfills the works of self, and the Rupakaya fulfills the works of others. They go together. We don't have one or the other. We have them both. But that's what we're heading for through this practice. So that's where we are. Next week we'll come back to starting with the 6th one of the Buddha's qualities, and then we'll probably, given the numbers of weeks we have, we'll probably skip over straight to the Do Dharma and Sangha. Yeah. Yeah, why not? Yeah. Then we'll have lunch. Yes. Yeah. Let me make a note that I stopped here.
Could you please explain the wisdom truth body again, and the difference between this body compared to the nature truth body?
So the wisdom truth body is the Buddha's omniscient mind. It's an impermanent phenomenon that changes moment by moment, by moment, by moment, by moment. So that whole collection of the wisdom that knows, the clarity and awareness that knows, the omniscient mind. The nature truth body is the emptiness of inherent existence of that mind and the true cessations of that mind. So the complete true cessations that have, everything that has been completely eliminated, it is a permanent phenomenon. Just like our mind, our ordinary obscured mind is also an impermanent phenomenon that changes moment to moment, and we have the emptiness of that mind that comes along with it, right? The Buddha has that same impermanent, permanent thing. Does that make sense to you?
Second question.
Okay, second question.
Can we focus solely on Maitreya with his crown, stupa, dharma wheel, and nectar vase, symbolizing each of the 3 jewels respectively, with Maitreya himself being the loving, kind guru?
Yeah, I don't know why you couldn't. I mean, as we get further into what is the Dharma and what is the Sangha, you may have, wish to go in a different direction from time to time, and you may want to expand that to include that Maitreya may be your fave. All the rest have the same qualities. But if that's the Buddha that's, that embodies the three jewels for you, I think that's okay. I'm getting a wince over here. Do you have a different thought?
I've heard Venerable say many times that she really wants people to have a strong relationship with Buddha Shakyamuni as the fundamental teacher of this tradition. And so if we focus primarily on a deity, whatever that may be, then maybe we're not establishing that relationship with Buddha Shakyamuni first.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So maybe developing some equanimity regarding the deities and seeing that it is we only know about Maitreya because of Shakyamuni Buddha. I mean, that's true. So we can start with that. Yeah, Tenzin.
Venerable, I have a hard time looking at the refuge view. I have a hard time remember all of them. Can I actually just visualize that? Like if there is a Kuan Yin, okay, it's a loving kindness, and then start from qualities first, and then I start to put in the image, and by ourselves.
Yeah.
But the basic framework are all there, which is like Maitreya and so forth. But the below one, I can put in all my.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it says even, I think, right in the text that we handed out, if this is really too complicated, you can even just use Shakyamuni Buddha as the image. But there is so much richness in cultivating the larger visualization, and that's what I want to stick with for our class purposes. For your own practice purpose, do what works for your mind within that framework. Okay, you get what I mean? Yeah. Okay. So we have a discussion question. We have a little bit of time for discussion today. 2 questions, and I'll just put them both out here. We won't meditate on. What forms of the Buddha do you most relate to? And which of the qualities give you confidence in the Buddha as a reliable refuge? What forms of the Buddha do you most relate to? Maitreya, for example, obviously, for our questioner. And then what qualities give you confidence in the Buddha as a reliable refuge? What particularly plucks the strings of your heart? Loving kindness for our Maitreya fan, right, for example. So which ones work for you? It's okay, it's just good to acknowledge and know, oh, that's the one that really gets me about Buddha. And then we can expand from there. Okay? So for our folks online, thank you very much. And we'll see you next week, same time. Yes, it's Thanksgiving. We're going to do it because it's the Dharma. And here we'll just take the next 10 minutes. We'll do our 12. We'll do our small groups, and we'll do our discussion on these questions and come back. Let's dedicate. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forever.